15.
Somebody mentioned that if you presented your material in such and such a way, then this review there would be no dangers. But the way you presented it was such that it made it look makes it much tougher. So he basically was saying that you could have the same exact technical baseline, but then the way you present it as what you're going to meet as the final is more important than what your actual technical baseline is.
And I think that's one of the dangers of these types of sort of stand-up presentation slide reviews that you have, is that you can fall into that trap where you present something that's in the correct way and therefore miss out on a big chunk of the design and essentially hide some of the issues that you are coping with. And I think from the point of view of actually getting the work done and making sure that the project will be successful, you're much better off presenting the issues that you're having and the design struggles things that you're struggling with, and getting feedback on those issues than just trying to hide them and say, you know, this one piece that looks really good, that's what we're presenting, and this other piece that doesn't look good, that's just an option. We're just thinking about that. I mean, because that doesn't give you any value. I think it's a standard presentation tactic or technique. You can't get commented on if you don't present something. If you don't show something on a slide, no one knows it's there. I mean, this is something that has come out of the CAPE report. It's come out of many other discussions, and it's sort of well known in industry that if you don't tell someone something, they can't comment on it. They unless they know it, they can't do anything. So, yeah, we know it exists, and I think it's our due diligence to ensure that it doesn't happen as much as possible.
Yeah, I want to commend, I think, our entire team. All of us have been very open throughout the entire process of this project, and I think the review board saw that and acknowledged it. It's not that we're in the business of gaming the CDR presentation style here. I think the team did a very good job, owning up to what still needs to be done, but maybe what we could have done as a collaborative group is try to, if something was known a few months ago, try to at least prepare a slide or two to give people the warm and fuzzy feeling inside that we have looked at this stuff in a more formal way than just having a 5-minute discussion in the elevator type of a thing. But the question was, have we gained anything? I also want to just throw out the very simple and obvious presentation skills. I mean, I, for one, had a different comfort level going into the CDR presentation. I think a lot of our team has grown in that aspect.
Yeah, everyone looked more comfortable.
Yeah, and that's invaluable. It truly is.
PDR, we put in so much work to try to get our story straight that for CDR, it was just almost like a delta. It was just, I felt like we were preparing for CDR and PDR.
So we're learning how to present the results of our work and how to spin the story such that we can convince them that we're where we should be. And I think we did learn a lot about how to do that. But there's not much I think we could learn today about how to improve our system. They definitely are going to pick at some nits, and they have found some things we haven't thought of. But I don't think any of them are deal breakers. Kind of the big things they harped on are things we're already well aware of and we've been thinking about for months now. So there's not too much we can gain from what their big issues are.
Yeah, I think the major gain that we did gain from the reviews was at the PDR. We had a lot of really good feedback there, and there was a lot of work that was done in preparing for that. And in doing that preparation, I think we learned a lot, and we got a lot of good information and progressed our design. I think for the CDR it was more of an exercise in presentation.
Well, I don't necessarily agree because it's a different board. At PDR, that was all the JPL internal review that was familiar with what JPL policies and practices are, what's being done on the lab. And this is an outside perspective that I'm expecting will give us some good feedback on things that we need to pay more attention to without being trapped within the confines of JPL.
It's a good point. I mean, there is a forcing function that comes from this that says there's something that we could have brushed aside in some way. This does force us to look at it in certain cases. But overall, I think that may have happened in one or two cases, but I don't think it warrants the full. I think the benefit's not as great as it would.
About
as it
holding a
was at
formal
PDR.
delta.
What?
Oh, you mean between PDR and CDR?
Yes.
It seems for a training perspective, there's diminishing returns going on. I'd say the most you guys learned was in SRR. I wasn't here, so I say you guys. Because that kicked the project into high gear in a serious way, from what I could tell. And then PDR, we definitely learned a lot more and gained here. And here we learned very little, and I suspect MRR we're going to learn even less, quite frankly.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
A lot of work and effort gets put into making these reviews happen, particularly the review package. Do you guys think you guys would have gotten the same amount of value or more value if we had a tabletop half-day discussion as opposed to us going up there and formally in a PowerPoint presentation showing something? I mean, if gate products were all read by the review board and then a day was spent on having that discussion as opposed to slides being flipped through, would that have added more value to the team?
Wholeheartedly agree.
I actually really like the way Wallops did it, their design review, in which they actually had a design review package that was separate from the slides that were presented. There were slides and there was a story told, and that helped set the context, but the actual work and showing the design was captured in a document. And I think that's actually valuable because it sets a baseline and says this is what our design is. And we sort of have done that with some of the gate products, but most of those gate products were completed from the majority at PDR. And so I think the real effort from going from PDR to CDR was finalizing those gate products and getting them signed, which might be why we don't feel like we've gained quite as much from this review as the previous one.
Having a different review board at the SRR and then the PDR and then CDR, we touched on a lot of the action items from the SRR at the PDR, but now that we had a different review board for CDR, it seemed like we were revisiting a lot of those issues again, that we had felt we had covered them and closed them at the PDR. And so I think we spent a lot of time today talking about some issues that we've already researched, we've already closed out, but we had to let the new board know the work we had done.
I think just having a second set of eyes on potential solutions was useful. So I think that we kind of knew where some of our holes were, so where some of the problem spots were. So they were able to help articulate them a little bit differently than we were. And you get close enough to it, you see it the same way every single time. And so they had a couple of different ideas on what we could look at, and I'm not sure we'll actually go down that path. There are also a lot of ideas on what we could add that'd be useful, which we just probably can't do in our time frame. But I think that's just useful to get the second take on, hey, think about it this way, and it lets you step back and then take it from another angle sometimes.
The most important thing that I've learned just as a concept is the idea of planning. I think I really had no clue what was involved in that, and I still, there's still, volumes to learn about even just planning in itself, but taking that first step into actually thinking through what is going to happen next, what is going to happen not just next, but a month from now, what is going to happen in 6 months from now, and looking at all those pieces and trying to restack that all up is critical to building and doing these kind of projects, even at the small scale like this. And I imagine it's much more so at the larger scale. So that's probably the biggest takeaway I took from this experience.
I think that's exactly right. I think that's part of what the Phaeton program is also about. It forces you to, as an ECH, you want to just go in and get it done, but forces you to plan more than get it done. And that was really frustrating at the beginning, but it's paid off a lot, very much so at this point.
that we're learning as we go. So we're the first group to go through this process, really, and it's, I kind of harp on it a lot, but it really is a big struggle on how you balance between getting a full-on training program laid onto a small-scale project, because you want to train for a big project, but you don't want to do a big project. And I think that we get very wrapped up in doing reviews and very wrapped up in doing a lot of process, and you compare what we're doing to what was done on the first flight in our sort of technology development, and it's night and day, right? And so they probably did a little less than you typically would. We're doing a whole lot more. And so I think we have a better idea now how to approach it than we did 6 months ago. But it's still a challenge to say, put your head down, get this technical problem solved, but still maintain a significant review every other month or something like that. So we're still learning. I think that future projects will hopefully benefit from that some, and we are too. I think that we've already seen in our program here at JPL where we've got a new project coming in, and they're getting a lot of really good knowledge from how the first couple are going through and learning from the process. So hopefully you guys are fine over time and does better.
I've already had people from the newer projects come and ask me questions, and I get to be the one to point them to the right person to go talk to occasionally. And so I think it is definitely a great program to have here at the lab, because it allows you to start making that network and finding out where to go and how to solve these types of problems.
As much as I like to be a pessimist, I think, not to be a shill, but I think Creighton is managed and run extremely well. The amount of experience we're gaining on a budget of about $2.3 million, a lot of companies will spend more amount of money than that just doing the training and not get a rocket flight out of it to boot.
I mean, you look at what people do on jobs at JPL, and frankly, it's more the norm than the exception to be working on more than one project. So it's the way that we do business these days. So I think learning to operate in that environment is useful. That said, I think we're learning a lot about what the scope of the job actually is. And I think that nobody really had a good idea coming in, so we didn't quite get it right the first time through. And so we're trying to figure that out also. And that involves a lot of work, not just amongst us, but amongst our other jobs too, because they are impacted one way or the other. Either they have to cover somebody more, or they're getting hurt, or work's not getting done, one of the two. And it's a learning process on how to estimate how much work there is to do, and then a process on how to best manage and communicate that with the appropriate people on lab and across the projects to make it all work out for everybody involved.
It's a lot of work to try and do both things, but in order to get the training, I would say actually you couldn't get this kind of training if you just isolated yourself in this kind of a project, because you would be getting just one view. And the training that we're getting is not just one view, it's over the entire life cycle of the project and how JPL works.
Well, if you're going to call prior to PDR, I mean, Kalina's eyes are on every slide every day. For CDR, I don't think I ever talked to any of my mentors really about the details of the slides, or the closest we got was the dry runs. That's about the only time I went over it with mentors.
No, it was different for me. The CDR required some work to be done where I needed more input from a mentor to align everything that we wanted to have at CDR. At PDR, it was less intense from the mentoring perspective for me. Plus, Kalina was the manager, Dawn at that point, so that wasn't really counted as
It
mentoring
was
for me.
not sort of a mentor, sort of not a mentor, you're right.
All right.
And I think from the point of view, since Kalina is our systems team, we still meet with her on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, depending on the week and how things are working out. And she did give us a lot of input on this, but I think she has backed off a little bit based on, I think, sort of letting us take the reins a little bit more and giving us a little bit more breadth on preparing for slides, for presentations, and the like.
Yeah, before PDR, in addition to Kalina helping out the rest of the team, Ben and I probably met with her maybe daily. I mean, she really kind of micromanaged us, but it was helpful. She knew what we had to do, gave us deadlines. We reviewed all of our products with her. This time around, it was more of just a check-in. It was, you know what you're supposed to do. Just check in and let me know that you got it done. So just like Ben said, she was kind of really leading us up to PDR, and this time she let us take care of it ourselves.
As you get more experience, you'll get more and more rope to hang yourself with. And I think you gave us a chance at the SRR. We could have done better there probably. It was our first crack at it, so I think we got more help for the PDR than we did at the SRR as kind of an artifact of that. But I think having a relatively successful PDR, again, they were a little more willing to give us a little more rope to go hang ourselves again. Hopefully we didn't do as much of a job of doing that as we did at the SRR. So I think that I've seen a change from review to review in terms of the amount of oversight that gets involved, at least from my end. So I know the mentors are all very active, even now compared to previous reviews, just in terms of giving help, but there's less checking in and saying, no, you got to go make these changes or go do it this way. Now, for this review, it was almost, or just to flip through the package saying, oh, yeah, it looks good. Whereas at the SRR, it was monthly or the month leading up, again, eyes on every slide type thing. So I think that hopefully as we demonstrate, we're able to do these things and we can learn how to do them better. They give us more opportunities to do them on our own.
There's been a lot of problems that we've been able to solve by finding the smart person who happens to work at APPEL. There's like 5,000 engineers and scientists or whatever. There's the guy for our need around. So our mentors are really helpful at saying, talk to this guy.
The worthwhile part, I think, is going to take a little time to be able to really answer thoroughly. I mean, you're not going to be able to tell overnight what you really got out of this. So, I hate to say it, but 5-6 years from now, I think we'll be better able to look back and reflect and say, oh, I really could have been here if I hadn't done that, or I wouldn't be here if I hadn't done that. And from an institutional perspective, that's going to be the same way.